since autonomous racing is racing and we do things a little bit different here, I decided to do also a little bit different here, because every time I am listening to workshops or to presentations, they introduce the biography of the people. And I think, yeah, I can research that by myself, but why is this person here today? Why did they invite this person? Like, what's the reason why this person is here? And today I want to introduce you Mauro Salazar. And I know the research of Mauro quite well. One of my former PhD students I worked with was one of his visiting students, and Mauro is researching in the field of control system technology. And when I look at his research, he's doing a lot of energy management and optimal control. And we need that in a race car, but because in the end, we get a velocity profile that's basically optimal for the car's behavior. And when I look at his research, I say he's an optimization expert, and that's why we invited him today. And he's doing theoretical and applied race car research. Mauro, welcome to this talk. I make you now a host so you can share your screen. Mm-hmm. 1 second. Yeah, you're now a host and you can share your screen.
Great. Okay, now I see way more control tools. Let me share. We want to share desktop number 2.
We can hear you.
Yes, fantastic. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Fantastic. Can you see my screen, I guess?
Yes.
You see also very nice cars. Fantastic. Good. Let's see if also this works, so we can point a bit. Yeah. Fantastic. So thanks a lot, Johannes, first of all, and all the organizers for organizing this amazing workshop. I think it's really relevant. If I may, I would like to add 4 items to the list you mentioned before about autonomous racing. I think it's also extremely fun to do research in this area, and that's also why it got so much attention. Today, I'm going to talk about racing at the edge of convexity. And so basically how we leveraged and devised models and algorithms to compute, let's say, race optimal design and operational strategies for electric race cars. I'm going to start the talk with some introduction. We all know, and looking at this fantastic red car I had the privilege to be working for in the past, we all know that the Formula One car has been hybridized very strongly in the already more than 10 years ago. Then for 2014, even more hybridizations came in. So a first example of electrification. Also, the 24 Hours of Le Mans is now hybrid electric, and we also have competitions which are fully electric. So this talk, you can already feel it's about electrified cars, and it will be rather leverage autonomy to show what autonomy can enable in terms of research for design and control. So basically, I'm relying on the fantastic work that you researchers are doing in this field. So we have hybrid electric race cars, but also, as I was saying, full electric competitions. Formula E, we all know. And you could also think about driving the 24 hours of Le Mans full electric, right? It's a bit more challenging because the 24 hours for sure, you need to recharge and so on and so forth. So today I would like to focus on full electric cars, as I mentioned, and whilst most of the research we do can be readily applied to full electric race cars like the Formula E, where you basically have a minimum amount of laps you have to drive basically and minimize the time to do so, I will focus on endurance racing, because it's a more generalized case of race whereby you have a specific amount of time, 24 hours, and you want to do as many laps as possible. And if you do it full electric, well, it's very challenging. And here at UE, at Eindhoven University of Technology, which is, you can also recognize our logo here in the back of this beautiful car, we have a group of very talented and motivated students working on it. The group is called In Motion. We also have now PhD students who then join our group, like Jorn van Kampen, from whom we took most of the research I'm going to present today, and others that are joining. And their goal is to drive the 24 hours of Le Mans fully electric. And to do so, they are devising new cars every every iteration, let's say, which lasts 3 to 4 years. This is the current iteration that I'll be working at. The new iteration, you can see extremely high levels of power and torque to reach these incredible numbers in terms of performance, and also the battery has paramount importance while you have to recharge it, and that's one of the strongest limitations. What they managed to achieve already 1.5 years ago is to recharge the battery in less than 12 minutes, and now they're aiming at 7.5 minutes charging, between 20% state of charge up to 80%, which is basically this nice bandwidth where you don't have over potentials already kicking in and making the store a bit more complicated. Now, what we want to do is to do this endurance race, right? So 24 hours full electric. So you can imagine that since charging takes, though these times are low compared to petrol cars, are still very high, right? So you really want to do the best with every milli, micro, or nanojoule you put in the car. You really want to take the best out of it. So you have quite some challenges there. Some are structural. So the first two here, you reach very high C rates and you want to minimize the aging of the battery cells, are structural challenges they're working on. And then you also have more strategical challenges. You want to optimize the efficiency of the powertrain, right? And the more efficient you are, the more laps you can drive. And then hopefully you're the car with most laps and you win. You arrive first. And also strategically plan the charging pit stops in terms of when do I stop, how much, how long do I charge, right? And then what do I do with the energy? How many laps do I drive? And how do I drive the laps? So you can already feel it's a multi-level optimization problem. You have the high level looking at how should I look at the race, let's say. And then once I'm driving a stint, so a consecutive number of laps, then how should I drive? And that's energy management, okay? So this really calls for race optimal design and control tools, which is what I would like to talk about today. So to solve this problem, we already mentioned it, you have a two-level decomposition approach. So on the high level, you have the maximum race time, 24 hours. Okay, what should we do? Well, you need to tell me how many pit stops we do, how long do we drive in between pit stops, and also how much do we charge when we stop? And how long do we charge or how much, but they're correlated, right? So they're kind of equivalent. Good. Now, to make these decisions, you need to know, given a charge time, so a charge energy you have on board, and how many laps you want to drive, what is the achievable stint time? And here is where the concept of autonomy is of paramount importance. But let's see. So basically, you need a relationship between energy and distance, number of laps, with what is the achievable stint time. So how fast, how much time do you need? What is the minimal amount of time you need to drive that? So you have to optimize that. So you can see a low-level optimization framework here, which given the stint length and the charge time, so the charge energy, again, needs to provide the achievable stint time to the high-level optimization. And also, for free, you get the optimal stint operation. Now, why did I say autonomy is very important? Well, because if you have an optimal driver with autonomy, it's always the case, who also knows how to manage the energy in the course of the race, like accounting for the car limitations, but really knowing, okay, here I have to cut. I wish I could push more, but then I would run out of battery energy far too soon. Then you can jointly optimize the speed profile. And we showed in our research that if you instead do a flat out strategy, yes, a human would do, and just try to push as much as possible, then you are significantly worse off. Okay, so here where charging is consuming and so on and so forth, it's really important to do this joint optimization. Good. So now we first focus on the low level, and well, in the low level you have a stint or a lap, and basically you want to minimize lap time, so the integral of one in time domain. For this powertrain, you have a battery on the left-hand side, but an electric motor, a gearbox, a final drive, and then the wheels. Our inputs are the motor power you can provide with your motor. You have propelling the rear wheels, and the transmission ratio. So basically the relationship between wheel speed and electric motor speed, gamma. Our state variables are kinetic energy, so speed and how much battery energy you have. And last but not least, we want to compare two transmission technologies, a fixed gear transmission and a continuously variable transmission. Fixed gear is basically the relationship can be optimized, but it's fixed. So given a wheel speed, the electric motor speed is given for the entire stint, the race, and so on and so forth, right? So gamma is constant. If you have a continuously variable transmission, you can choose gamma between two lower bound and upper bound. And this is also what you find in some mopeds and so on and so forth. Fixed transmission is great because it's lightweight and the transmission efficiency is very high because it's a very simple device, but you cannot optimize the gear ratio. So which is what a CVT enables you to do. You can choose the optimal electric motor operation in terms of efficiency, but also how much power you can deploy, which is very important. However, a CVT is a bit heavier and the transmission efficiency is lower. So which one is the best? Well, you have to solve the problem for both and then you pick, right? So to do so, we have to frame the problem in a solvable manner. And to frame it in a solvable manner, it means we convert it to space domain, and this way we have a finite horizon problem. Okay. And also you can implement position-dependent parameters. For instance, a maximum speed profile. Here you can see this is the Le Mans circuit, and depending on where you are on the racetrack in longitudinal position, you have a maximum speed, here given in dashed gray, which tells you basically how fast can you drive. If you would go faster, then you would drift off and crash. How do you get it? You measure it from expert drivers. What we would do with in Formula One, right? Or if you have an autonomous car, well, you can either simulate it or also measure it using reinforcement learning schemes and so on and so forth, and try, okay, what is really the limit of the tires with these conditions, and then you can update it and solve. Okay. Then if position is your independent variable, well, then you're no longer, if you take the derivative, let's say, so the variation of energy is no longer power, but force, right? And force is powered by speed. So now what we want to do is to frame it as a convex optimization problem. So first, because we stated it in the title, and also because, well, you all know, you have global optimality guarantees when you solve it. And second, you can solve it fast. So when you do a comparison, you don't have, yeah, maybe in one case I'm stuck in a local optimum, or the strategies I'm testing, yeah, it's a heuristic, so I don't know whether it's the strategy that it's making everything worse. It's really the achievable lap time with the technologies, with the parameters, and so on and so forth. So that's very important for our research. So again, we want to minimize lap time, which is the integral in space of the lethargy. Lethargy is how slow you are per unit distance, it's DTDS. And it's basically the inverse of speed. Now you could ask me, yeah, but okay, wait a sec. Is this constraint convex? And well, actually the function 1/v for positive v is convex. So what we can do is to take the epigraph, do a convex relaxation. And since you're minimizing the TDS, it will hold with the quality once you optimize. For kinetic energy, you will have this constraint, which again is not really convex, but you can again relax it. And again, use the same reasoning. So the reasoning we use here is the one of lossless relaxations. And I guess most of the audience should be familiar with it. Basically, at the optimum, we solve a non-physical problem, but at the optimum, the optimality is pushing it against the physical solution. And so we can get the best out of both worlds, fast convergence and a physical solution. Okay. For the components, we do the same. So we have transmission, electric motor, and battery. We just focus quickly on the electric motor. So an electric and the rest, sorry, you can find in this manuscript, and I will then share the slides and you can find all information online. Electric motor, given a DC power to the inverter motor block, you get mechanical power PM plus losses. And the losses, we say, well, it's a quadratic function of this vector X, where you have 1 omega, which is the speed of the electric motor, and the mechanical power of the motor. And you do X transpose QX, so we have quadratic term, cross couplings, and you see you have constants, linear terms, cross couplings, and quadratic terms. Q is symmetric and positive semi-definite. So this model is convex, and you can also see it as a very nice, it's a very nice accuracy. So again, we're getting the best of both worlds. Now we need to go to force, right? Because we are in space domain. So we divide by speed twice. So let's take the mechanical power on the left. We have PDC minus PM. You divide by speed twice. By speed once is P by V is force. If you do it twice, you also have the lethargy multiplied. 1/v is DTDS. So that's what you get on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, well, dividing by speed twice is like dividing X by speed once. And this is what you get. So 1/v is the DTDS, the lethargy, electric motor speed by speed is the gear ratios, and power by speed is force. Okay, everyone with me? And what you do, you take the square root basically of the Q matrix. Allow me this inaccuracy, but the Cholesky factorization, more properly said. You define Z as C times Y, and then you can frame everything as a second order conic constraint. And basically we proceed with entire components like this, and in the end you end up with a fully convex second order conic program with global optimality guarantees. You can solve it quick, and you know that that's the global optimum for the given models. What do you get? Well, after 1 second of computing, you see that it's a comparison. Fixed gear transmission is blue, in black is the CVT. You can see basically that you have a difference of lap time here in the second plot between the fixed gear transmission and CVT. The CVT is faster. Why is it faster? Well, you can see here, the fixed gear transmission have a constant gear ratio, while the CVT is playing with it a lot. And if you check more carefully, well, it's playing with it a lot, especially when you exit the corner. So here you're exiting the corner, no longer speed limited. And you accelerate a bit faster in black. Why? Because you can increase the gear ratio there, deploy full power with the electric motor, and gain this very nice lap time advantage. And the reason is really because with the CVT, you skip this torque limited region where power is limited by the speed of the electric motor, and right away you increase the motor speed and deploy full power. With the fixed transmission, you have to wait to reach that velocity. So in the end, at lower velocities, you can see it here in black, you can accelerate faster with the continuously variable transmission compared to fixed gear, right? Then at some point, I mean, the fixed gear is lighter, it's more efficient, so you will have more acceleration, but it's too late. At low speed, that's where you need to be faster. And that's something you really learn in Formula One racing. Okay, so what we learn here is that a CVT vehicle can significantly outperform a fixed transmission. Now, this was for a given setup, okay? So one could say, okay, but this was for this powertrain. And in fact, yeah, if we actually do a scan in terms of sizing and battery of the motor and battery allowance, then we can very rapidly compute the global optimum. Why? Because of this convex framework. In 1 second, you get the solution. So you do a scan, and after a couple of hours, you're done. And you learn that depending on the powertrain design choices, you may be faster with the continuously variable transmission or a fixed gear transmission. Okay. Now, you may say, okay, but we still need to take into account overheating, and you showed it in the slide, and vehicle dynamics. This maximum speed profile is nice, but actually you could do something which is a bit more accurate. So what do you do? Well, you want to minimize, again, the scene time. What we did was to include, and this was a work together with this Thomas Herman, a former PhD at Munich and colleague of Johannes, so very nice working with him. So we added more state variables, battery temperature, and we choose a given and fixed gear transmission. Then we want to include, and here is where we reach the edge of convexity, the individual tires. Now, since we have only a rear motor and it's unique, a bicycle model is sufficient. And I think all of you know very well what a bicycle model is. And we look at the axle force instead of the individual wheels. If you want to look at the individual wheel forces, well, you can check this paper we did together with University Racing Eindhoven, a Formula student team. And they were doing very well in autonomous racing last year, I remember. And here what we did was to optimize the individual wheels because they're individually actuated and do torque vectoring. You can check it, and at ECC, we're gonna present it. For now, as I said, a single bicycle model is a single track is sufficient. So we look at that, and basically you have a longitudinal force balance. So far, so good. And a lateral force balance. And here is where you reach the edge of convexity. So basically here we say, okay, kinetic energy, right, times the inverse of the radius of curvature, this RC inv. So times the track curvature basically has to be equal to the lateral forces, assuming very small angles, right? And the radius of curvature has to be given. You cannot joint optimize it, otherwise you break convexity in this case. So this is really where we converge to the edge of convexity. And if you want to discuss them later offline, shoot me an email or so, and more than happy to show you then these convex models doing very, very optimal, but very funky things. Then you add some more balances. You include the longitudinal axle forces. You include the friction circles, front and rear, right? And well, for the electro-thermomechanical models, I refer you to these two manuscripts. They're available, so just shoot me an email if you want them, or you can find them online. Long story short, you can frame everything, again, in a convex manner and efficiently solve it. And now if you solve with this more complicated model, accounting for thermal limitations and a more accurate bicycle model, what you get is that, suppose you want to do 11 laps and 5 minutes of charging, you're energy limited. So here you can see that the speed profile is quite mild, quite smooth. Why? Yeah, because also the power, you cannot push like you wish. And you usually see in Formula One racing, because you really do energy management a lot. And we showed here, if you do flat out, it's a disaster. So you need to be very careful. Also, since you do a lot of regenerative braking, you're not using so much the hydraulic brakes, and you mostly use the friction circles in this way. Now, again, you can solve this very quickly. So basically, you can do a scan for different scenarios, right? And for each of these, get the achievable stint time. And then take this table and give it to the high-level optimization. Now we can frame the high-level optimization. How do you do it? Well, you want to make sure that your stint time when you sum it stays below the 24 hours, and then you decide how much you charge per stint, how many laps do you drive, and whether you take the pit stop or not, which is a binary variable. You take the stint time, you fit it. I don't want to go too much into details, but it can be done. And then you optimize the pit stop. Okay, 1 if you do it, 0 if you don't, and then using big M approximations and relaxations, basically what you can do is to frame everything again as a second order conic constraint. And overall, for the high level problem, you get a mixed integer because you have the number of laps and so on. Second order conic program, you can solve it very quickly, less than 10 seconds, and do a comparison. Here we do for 6 hours due to image readability issues. And what you learn here, the largest distance was achieved with 15 stops. But the most important thing is that even if you fix the number of stops at 7, 8, 11, and so on and so forth, as you can see there, you can do worse even though you're optimizing by a significant margin. So you really need to jointly optimize the number of stops with what you do in between. Also, something interesting to notice is that, and depending on the strategy, the charge time, the limit we said is 7.5 minutes for full charging, is not always complete. Often you do partial charging also. And what you see is that we are oscillating around the maximum average speed strategy, which in this case, again, is this one in gray, only involves 4 minutes of charging per stop. So it's really important to jointly optimize everything. Otherwise, you may get very poor results. That's basically the bottom line, but with this framework, you can do it. And this way, I come to the conclusion. We decompose this race problem in separate stints, assuming a perfect or autonomous driver. We solved everything with global optimality guarantees, jointly optimizing pit stop, stint length, and charge time, showing how crucial it is jointly with the powertrain operation. We show a clear correlation between stint length and charge time, and also that partial charging can be optimal. And last but not least, when in the future, we would really like, I think the most important item here is real-time implementation. Convex optimization means you can do it fast and with global optimality guarantees. So let's do it on the race car and also in the pit lane. Having said that, I come to my last slide. I would really like to thank everyone who contributed to these projects. And here you can find also the publications on the topic and an invitation to join our ECC workshop, which is going to be in London on future automotive systems. If you're around, it would be really great to chat more about these fascinating topics. Thanks a lot. And I'm very open to questions now or also in the Q&A session.